You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today we're chatting about 25 years in business, no mean feat. And to join me on the discussion today is Dave Lister, Sales and Finance Director at Express Legal Services. Express, for the uninitiated, is a search and ancillary service provider. Topic of conversation today, really going over those 25 years that you've been going, Dave, and telling us about how you started out, how the industry's changed, a bit of a trip down memory lane for you.
Look forward to it.
Great to have you on the podcast. Thank you. In the first instance, though, tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Okay, so I'm Dave Lister, as you've just said. I'm one of the founders and director of Express Legal Services. Yes, we've been in business 25 years. We've just ticked over into year 26. And in all that time, the role that I have has never changed. Obviously, I'm part of a family business. On the day-to-day basis, my family is myself, Lynne, my good lady of almost 56 years, and our three kids, Christian, Russell and Hannah. And we all have found our own niche within the business, and we have a very, very relaxed and non-corporate style. And it works brilliantly well for us as a family business. And I am acutely aware that there's not many people who could work in a family business, but it works for us. The magic has happened for us.
Talk us through some of the services that Express provide.
So we started life, as most search companies, very simply. We were search providers. And when I look back at 25 years ago, there was a very small range of products that we would have been involved with at that time. And then as the sort of the industry and the conveyancing side has grown up, if you like, there's been more and more and more. So we are now in the realms of not only products, of which we host somewhere around 400 on our platforms, but from around about 2016, we got heavily involved into the IT side as well. So we have lots of IT offerings, lots of integrations, etc., etc. So the business splits itself really now between all manner of conveyancing property products to obviously compliance products has come in, the AMLs, etc. And then overlaying all of that is the IT side, which we invest heavily in, and we're doing very, very well with.
So go back 25 years. Where did the idea come from? We were chatting before we started recording. It all started around the dining room table.
Certainly did. Well, to go back a little bit further than the dining room table is that Lynne, in her past life, was the editor of a franchise magazine for about 11 years, meeting lots and lots of franchise formats, and bumped into the original owners of PSG, which was Julie and Gary Hester, and bumped into them at one of the trade shows. And Julie and Gary had set up their own little search company. And as search companies do, you start off very small and immediately volume gets a grip of you, and you find yourself that your service levels are not great. You're running around like a headless chicken and you need an answer. And Julie contacted Lynne and said, can you advise us or help us? We think franchising might be the route for us to contain this business that we have. Now, Lynne couldn't help them form a franchise, but she definitely did point them to the right people. So these would be the best consultants of the day, the best franchise lawyers of the day. And then periodically she bumped into them after that and came home from one exhibition and said, I'm fed up of running around the country and chasing deadlines, which I'm sure you will appreciate. The magazine is always on deadline for something or other. I think I'd like to do something else. And I've seen this business and I haven't got a clue what they do, but I'm intrigued by it. I said, okay, what do they, what is it they do? And Lynne told me that made no sense to me either. We was green as cabbages. This rumbled on for months and months and months. And then Lynne came home again from a trade show, an exhibition, and said, I've met these Hester's people again. I think I'd like to go and talk to them about operating one of their franchises. I said, great, let's go. Just before we were going to contact them and make an appointment, I said, I just had this bright idea, and I said, well, we have our friend from school, Kevin, because the backdrop to all of this is that Lynne and I were in the same class at school, and we've never been apart since. And Kevin was also in our school, and he was at the time, as a working class kid, he was a superstar because he was the one and only person we knew who went to university, and he became a solicitor, and he was the first superstar that we connected with. I said, let's go and take Kevin out for a pint of pint, and let's see if we can hang some more meat on this bone. And we did. And Kevin said, yeah, there is a search industry. Some people use it 100%. Some people use it as an emergency service. And then you've got everything in between. There's definitely a business there. Off you go buy your franchise. Another pint of Guinness, please, type of lunch it was. Anyway, by the end of the lunch, Kev said, do you know what? He said, I'll teach you. I'll show you. If you want to do that, or at least I'll show you the ropes, and the method, and see if you still, it's still what you're interested in before you go and commit yourself. Great, we did that. And so from that, we never contacted PSG whatsoever. We got round the dining room table and we spent 18 months of R&D learning it as we went. And that's how we got started.
I love that story. What a fantastic way to get going. And at the time, as you say, that the search industry was very embryonic. I mean, talk me through what even information you were going to go and get hold of, because as far as I understand, I mean, even the drains and water searches, for example, were really very, very light at those times as well, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, when we started, there was absolutely nothing electronic. You had to make your appointments at various departments within the local authority, including water and drainage when we first started, because it was part of the Con 29 questions. And so we slavishly had this diary running, and, I winced sometimes of how we actually managed to do it with volume of hopping from one council to another every single day. And whether I would have the legs for doing that now, I don't really know. It's debatable. But that's how it was, and it felt very much, and I think you just put your finger on the pulse there, it felt very much like a cottagey industry. It had a cottagey feel about it, all of it hand knitted, but it was definitely much more relaxed. Even with the volume, it was much more relaxed feel than it has today.
And at that stage, presumably, there was very little in terms of standardization, regulation. I know, for example, you guys are members of COPSO.
Yeah.
How did that all develop? How did the information and regulation of that information start to get introduced?
Very, very early on, we knew that we needed to have a more rounded view of the sector than what we had. It was a very insular thing for the Lister family, and the volume soaked up all of your time, and we were really in our own little bubble, not really moving out of that. And so when IPSA and COPSO was formed, we were the first at the table. We need to be part of this. And my eldest lad, Chris, who just naturally fell into being our guard dog with legislation and compliance, etc., just went for it and owned it virtually from day one, which we were all very relieved at because we didn't want any part of it. And so we like regulation. We like that structure of it. We bring a lot to the party in terms of we want everything to advance. We don't want everything just to stay the same all the time. How can we make it better? Because ultimately, you're working for a consumer at the other end. And in between, we have a conveyancer who needs to be delivering the very best title that they possibly can. And how do we make that as easy as possible? And that's the thing that drove us then, and it's the thing that drives us now.
And how did the discussions around who was going to design that data standardization come about? Who took ownership of that? How did it develop, I suppose?
Well, do you know what? Over the time, I think a lot of things that have happened in this industry have happened by osmosis. Things just spring up out the ground. Guidance, a word I hate, is guidance, because everybody's interpretation of guidance is different. And who has the right interpretation? Nobody. It's a woolly phrase. And so you get all of these factions and all of these people who've got differing views hanging around one word, which is guidance. But you stick together, and some of these trade meetings can be explosive, because everyone round the table has a commercial interest as well as an interest in improving standards. And when you have that can be incendiary, because what might work for one business because they've aligned themselves to the way they do business, and you're coming in with, well, we think we should do this or we should do that and change this, change that. Well, that's no good for my business because we're not structured that way. And it takes many, many years to find common ground, is my answer to you. And it almost is by osmosis where, when people settle down and they get past that my business thing, I could see that being good for the industry. And then we get some real change at that point. But you've got to go through quite a lot of discomfort to get to that point.
So if we started out back in the early 2000s with really a handful of searches, and as you say, you've now got knocking on for 400 on your platforms, how has that developed over the years, and what's your view of how that's developed over that time as well?
You have other commercial entities like your enviro guys and the water guys and mining, etc. And in order to keep those entities going, you've got your basic toolkit, if you like, your basic products that you come to market with. And then, well, it'd be great if we could do this because we have some of this data here, and can we leverage yet another report out of what we've got here? And so that's just progress. That is a business just progressing itself and adding items on, to their shopping line, if you like. And that is how it has grown up. Then into the mix, of late, you've got the compliance products, and a business really out of nothing has sprung up out of the desert. So we have to host all of those products as well. And this is how it happens. And there's always something new. And the nice thing about it is that it's still evolving. I think I like that it's still evolving. And who knows what's awaiting for us further down the line.
Well, on that point then, do you have sympathy, empathy for the sentiment that we're just throwing more and more on the plate of conveyancers?
Yes.
We started out with perhaps local authority searches. We did enviro. We introduced flood. We're now talking about climate change, that kind of thing. Where's your head at with that?
My personal view is that there are far too many burdens on conveyancers, far too many. And I think the whole thing centres around insurance, is PI, because if it all goes wrong, who can we sue? Oh, those guys there, they're at the heart of everything. That's another burden we throw on them. They'll handle it. And I really wish that we could have, and you were talking about how things develop there. One of my wishes would be for, say, people from a search company to do a job swap, and just for a week and go and sit in a conveyancing office and see it firsthand of what these guys have to put up with, and vice versa. And I think estate agents should get into that ring as well, and anyone else that throws their lot in and chips in. But from a conveyancing point of view, again, I'm going to come back to this word guidance on everything and the interpretation of it. Far too much pressure. Guidance needs to be rules. It needs to move into, this is what you do and this is exactly how you should do it, not a guidance note. I have great sympathy with them. Everything that we do here, can only speak for my own business here, but Everything that we do is to help the conveyancer and make their life easier. And I'll never, ever stop doing that. There's certain factions trying to automate the whole thing. And as you will appreciate, David, from your past, there's that many rabbit holes with conveyancing. They're never going to do it. It's never going to happen. You get calls out of the blue from left field with a conveyancer who's spinning so many different plates at one time, times by so many different files that they've got open, and sometimes they just have brain fog. I got a call from a very, very long time client of mine just about a month ago. They were just like, my head can't take anymore. What do you know about lead mining? I said, I know quite a lot about lead mining, actually. What do you want to know? And immediately you can hear the relief from this person for a very simple thing like that of lead mines. And that is not uncommon. Lead mines is a bit more obscure, I will say, but it's not uncommon to be fielding those sort of calls. And it really doesn't matter how much IT we pack in now, and we do constantly. Always the phones are ringing with a conveyancer or another saying, can you help me? And so I don't think we will ever knock the human element out, because they need 5-star support and service. And my view of 5-star support and service is that I have people who can answer that phone, but not only answer a phone, they understand fully what's being asked of them, and we can deliver an answer.
You said that one of the exciting things about this sector is that it's evolving, it's developing. How do you see that it will evolve and develop, particularly in the context of what you said about the challenges that we see with the amount of information that's sort of laid at the conveyancer's door?
So we're at this time shift now, aren't we, again, with data and trying to digitize absolutely everything. And I think it's one of these periods where it's in a state of flux, where the word open, when it comes to data, people are confusing that with free. The word open is free to some people. That's never going to happen, because you've got too many commercial entities who've spent gazillions of pounds building up their businesses. But I do think we need to find a way to collaborate more. Big collaborators here collaborate with anybody, but there is always a commercial element behind it. You can't hide from it, because without that, we've no business. Mm-hmm. And so, common sense has got to come into the room at some point. There's been a thing recently in the past few days about platform providers locking up conveyancing firms where they're not allowing them to develop things outside of the sphere of what they're providing. And it's very, very narrow-minded, I think that. Very narrow-minded. So the way we go to market with IT is that I have never met 2 conveyancers who are the same. I've never met 2 firms that are the same, because everybody has got their own culture and their own form of OCD of how they get through the day. Every single person, every single firm. The end result is the same, but the way they go about it is totally different. And so I can't remember a single time when we've done something on IT for a conveyancer where they've not said, oh, it's good, but for us, it would have to do this. Or for us, it would have to do that. Okay, well, let's tinker around with that. We won't charge you or anything like that. And so we've got ourselves into sort of a bespoke market where, in order to make their lives easier and to use the system, we personalize it. And we're on that track. We've been on it for a long time, and I have no intention of stopping doing that, because at the end of the day, we've all got a job to do, and without conveyancers, we won't be in business. And so I want to see happy conveyancers, and the people around it who surround it and supply to it have just got to be more flexible in their approach, I think.
Same question, but about conveyancing. What do you see as the future of the profession, of the role of the conveyancer over perhaps the next 5-10 years?
I think they are splintered in many ways at the moment, in terms of pure conveyancers and conveyancers who are part of probably big platform providers who only do part of that job. It's more like a factory process. And somewhere in the middle, there's got to be a meeting of minds where this is the standard, this is what we do, and people understanding how that all works. It's just not feasible to have this, because the industry has gone from this cottage thing that I said before to a very corporate feel now. Now, with corporate, it gets wrapped up in IT jargon, and it gives a sort of a false reading, not only to conveyancers, but to consumers as well, in that everything is at a push of a button. And these are where the demand and the pressures, because they've got the pressures coming back up the pipe as well, because they're at the sharp end of the pencil. And still there is an understanding that that isn't how it actually works, because you've got land law to navigate, you've got land registry to navigate, etc., etc. And these are, titles to unpick. And these are very, very difficult areas and specialized areas of law. It isn't about shuffling a few papers and looking at a plan and going, oh yeah, everything will be okay. There is much more meat in that sandwich than that. And I don't know how we get that message across, that the process is the process. And in order to deliver the very best title that they can, sometimes takes a bit longer. Time is the enemy, I'm afraid. And consumers have just gotten on to the end of everything. In a digitized world, which is where we live, everything can happen in an instant. And I can't see how they're going to make that happen, especially in conveyancing. Too many rabbit holes.
I guess 25 years in any sector is a huge amount of time, but particularly in property, which is so fast moving, it's to be applauded, Dave. So a very hearty congratulations from today's Conveyancer on your milestone. What's next, or what's the next part of the Express journey for you? You were saying that you and Lynne are both approaching a milestone birthday. We don't ask obviously what that milestone is, but what's next for the business? What happens from here? We've talked about some of the things that are happening in and around the profession. It's a very exciting time to be in property.
Yeah. So I think that more of the same from us. I think we've hit a sweet spot in that I will admit, even on this podcast, that I know relatively little about IT. What I know about IT, David, I could write on the back of my thumb, and I would still have room for my national insurance number and possibly my DNA code. But I have a wonderful, wonderful team around me who understand it thoroughly. But I can't shake my roots of 5-star customer service and support. I have these two forces all the time. And we've hit this sweet spot of, and I've drilled this into my team now, is that every pound that we invest, and we do invest a lot of money in this business, 50p goes towards what will help our clients and the industry at large. But the other 50p has got to be for inward investment that we can. There's no point in going out there saying we can do this if we haven't got the tools in-house to be able to deliver. So I have a 50-50 split of progression towards the sector and to enable my guys to be able to deliver on that promise. And up to now, that has worked perfectly for us. And I don't see any change in the immediate future. You mentioned milestone birthdays. Yes, Lynne and I hit 70 this year. And no, we're fit and healthy. No intention whatsoever of slowing down or jumping off. There's plenty to do, especially around the IT space, if you do it right. And that's just my opinion of what is right. Again, here we go. You get so many different opinions of what is right and what is wrong. But at this moment in time, I don't lose 1 second of sleep thinking that we took a wrong turn anywhere. And so while that is running along quite sweetly for us, let's just keep on doing it. More of the same, I would say.
A lovely conclusion to the podcast. And I have to say, Dave, I'm very, very appreciative of you joining and sharing the story of Express as well. So thanks so much for joining.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. My thanks to Dave. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.